What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Line Movement NBA show. I'm Dieter Kurtenbach, joined by Big Saxy himself, Matt LaMarca, the guru of Long Island, coming in with all of the picks. And Matt, we have been waiting for this show for quite a while now. NBA playoffs actually here, Pitbull playoffs. You know what time it is. And we already have some craziness up on the board. I want to go over Monday's games, don't get me wrong, but we got to start this show with the Orlando Magic, the only home team in the bubble, taking down the Milwaukee Bucks 122-110 in game one. Neither of us saw that coming. Neither of us took Orlando in the points. You were ardent that the Bucks were going to sweep. They are not going to sweep. And in fact, Orlando's in the driver's seat. Do we totally fade the Bucks from here on out because they're frauds, they're fraudulent, they got to get out of here, Giannis is a fraudulent MVP, all this stuff? Or is it just, game one jitters for a team that has some stuff it needs to work out, but can still be a dominant force? Matt LaMarca, your thoughts? Bucks, Magic, what the hell happened?
Yeah, I mean, the Bucks are clearly frauds. The Magic are going to sweep. Let's load up on Orlando here. No, it was one game, and you know what? We probably should have given that a little bit more consideration to the fact that this team hasn't played serious basketball in like 6 months. They didn't really play a ton of games that meant anything in the bubble. They weren't overly impressive in the bubble. They rested guys. So it's not all that surprising that it's taken them some time, I guess, to find their rhythm. They were pretty poor offensively in the first half. I don't think Orlando is going to score 122 points against them very often anymore. The Bucks defensively are a juggernaut. What makes the Bucks is that their defense is so good.
Right. In theory. But when you let other teams shoot as many threes as the Orlando Magic were allowed to shoot, and they went up for 41 three-pointers and made 16 of them. That's a 39% clip. That is something that the Bucks will concede. And this is something that I think is a trend that we're starting to notice. It's certainly a trend that the Bucks are going to concede the three and protect the rim. By the way, that didn't really work out. Vucevic got 35. But it seems as if shot making in the bubble is on another level. And the going theory I've been hearing from people around the NBA is it has a static background, more or less. There's less stuff to have to worry about behind the hoop. They make that thing out of glass for a reason. It's so fans can see through, not for the players. And a static background, less noise, guys are making more shots. If the Bucks want to keep conceding three-pointers, maybe they won't get burned by the Magic more than once, and that burn has already gone down. But I'm starting to worry about the overall scheme of things if this is going to be the norm and everyone's going to knock down shots because they're NBA players. And if you give NBA players open shots, they should knock them down. And if you give them open shots in a closed gym, well, I guess they're knocking them down. What do you think about that? Because the Bucks aren't going to change their stripes at this juncture. They got a lot of stuff to figure out, but they're not going to switch everything up now.
It is concerning. The Bucks allow the highest percentage of three-pointers in the league. They are dead last in that regard. So you're right. They're not going to change their defense, and it could pose some problems against teams that are good three-point shooting teams. I just don't see that being the Orlando Magic. They were, 25th, I think, in three-point percentage this year. This is not a team that is going to burn them from behind the arc outside of in game one. I mean, maybe they can catch lightning in a bottle again, but I think that this was just a fluky performance. I'm certainly not selling the Bucks. I think if the Bucks futures prices go down, it's a good time to invest if you've missed out on them. For sure, if they're anything less than, minus 1,000 to win this series, I think that certainly becomes a good price. Totally. I hear what you're saying. The 3-point shooting does make them vulnerable. We saw that against Toronto last year when Fred VanVleet caught fire against them. I just don't think the Magic are the team to exploit that.
And I'm with you. I'm just playing devil's advocate here because this was shocking. And it didn't feel unjust in many ways. And it exposed three flaws. We already talked about the 3-point shooting that Milwaukee is going to concede. You knock them down, you have a chance to win. Their number 2 guy is Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton was bad in this game. 4 for 12 from the floor, 2 for 6 from beyond the arc. He was -8 overall. He did not affect the game in a positive way. The Bucks don't have much of a chance of winning any serious games, much less one against the Orlando Magic, when that happens. I mean, he needs to up his game. We know he can, but also, those question marks still exist around Chris Middleton a little bit. He is not one of those dyed-in-the-wool bona fide superstars. He's an all-star, sure, but I don't know if he's ascended to the next level. He needs to get up there because Giannis can't do it himself. And if you ask Giannis to do it himself, the Bucks can be really easy to defend. And then the final point I want to make, 18 from 28 from the free throw line is just unacceptable for the Bucks. I mean, not when you're able to knock down shots the way the teams are able to knock down shots. You would think it'd be easier to knock down free throws. There's no crowd and there's nothing behind the backboard, but here we are. I'm still in on the Bucks, don't get me wrong, but if you hold a Bucks futures ticket, if you hold a Bucks Eastern Conference winners ticket, if you hold an NBA Finals ticket, I don't know. Would you try to get back in? Because if they have another bad performance, even in a win, I can imagine that those odds are going to become more lucrative for somebody who wants to get in on the action. Is that something that you would consider? What do you need to see from Milwaukee to feel like they're a good futures play going forward?
I've seen enough.
Okay.
I've seen enough from them during the regular season. I'm not trying to completely dismiss your concerns or the concerns of the public in general. Like they are valid, but this is still statistically an all-time great team. And if people are going to become, fearful of them or of them being upset, you could argue that even with a loss, the Bucks should be bigger favorites to win the East now because of the injury to Gordon Hayward.
Right.
So if their odds get any shorter, I absolutely think it's a great time to invest.
Well, let's talk about that Gordon Hayward injury because we talked a lot in the last show about the Sixers and the Celtics in that series and some of the issues that the Sixers could provide to Boston. And there were stretches where Boston looked like a juggernaut. Those stretches had Gordon Hayward on the floor, and now he has a grade 3 ankle sprain and is going to be out for a month minimum. That's a bad ankle sprain. And if you saw it, you knew it in the moment. That ain't going to be right for a long time. That's a big loss for them because they were starting to kind of congeal, and he is a big part of their best unit. Now, Jason Tatum has to take on a larger role. Now, Jaylen Brown has to take on a larger role. And while they have both been really, really good as of late, asking them to take on even more might be too much. But here's the thing. It felt like Philadelphia had that game if they just put it together. And we talked a bunch in the last show, who the hell was going to stop Joel Embiid? Apparently, the Philadelphia 76ers goal was to stop Joel Embiid because they barely gave him the ball. I don't listen. The questions about the Sixers have been asked for years. Coaching, matchup style, just system fit, all this stuff. Can these two guys work together? Can these three guys work together? Is Tobias Harris too soft? What the hell is Al Horford doing on this team? But Joel Embiid only getting up 15 shots in a game where he was getting anything he wanted. That feels unacceptable. And I don't know if it's going to get fixed going forward. What was your takeaway on that?
Yeah, I mean, we should give Daniel Tice some credit.
He was okay.
Yeah. That was one of the big. That was one of the big adjustments that the Celtics made. They had lost all of their first 3 games against the 76ers this year. In the 4th game, they managed to win it. Tice held Embiid to, I want to say he was like 1 for 11 from the field. So that change, I do think, helps their defense a little bit. But you're right. It's Joel Embiid needing to dominate the game. And he said that in the post-game interview, he needs to command a bigger work rate. I mean, when you're putting up the same amount of shots as Alec Burks in a game, it's a problem. It's a problem. So we need more Embiid. I actually think that this is a nice time to buy in on the 76ers. We talked about them as a potential upset for the Hayward injury. And I think that now, you can get them at 6-1 to win the series. I think that's a pretty tasty price.
I don't disagree with you at all. And it's kind of frustrating as somebody who had bought in a little bit to the Celtics hype and saw stretches of it when Hayward was on the floor with Tatum doing what Tatum was doing. He's turned into a fairly nice defender here on top of being a really clean offensive. really clean
Absolutely.
offensive guy. And then Brown has really come into his own. You know that they're well coached. Kemba's always going to be competent. You were looking around. You're thinking about, oh, who knows about the Bucks? You're looking at Toronto. You're saying, okay, who's going to take those shots down the stretch? And I look at Boston with Gordon Hayward on the floor, and I go, this might be the team. With him there, I can't feel confident doing it. And yeah, if you're getting 6-1 on the Sixers going forward in this series, if Joel Embiid puts up 25 shots, I don't know. I don't know if the Celtics are going to be able to match that. Maybe Daniel Tice has him in the bag. Maybe he's got them all figured out. That's not really what I saw. I saw a competent effort, but a guy who was overmatched. And maybe the overmatch is truly the Sixers against themselves, that they'll never be able to figure it out, that they need to, scrap it down for parts. Who knows? But this was a weird game because you could buy into both sides going forward. And again, 6-1, I think you got to get in on the Sixers at that price, especially now with the Hayward injury. Let's go over the other three games.
One more
happened.
real quick
Oh, no,
thing.
absolutely. Let's hear it.
I want to just bring up the X factor here for the 76ers.
Is it Al Horford being really bad?
No. It's actually Matisse Thybulle. I think that
Talk to me about him.
I think he is the key to the 76ers winning this series. Okay. I believe he needs to play more. He put Jason Tatum in the shackles when he was guarding him. He served as his primary defender for roughly 23 possessions in the last game, held Tatum to 2 of 9 shooting over that time frame. If he can defend like that with no Gordon Hayward for the Celtics to pick up any of the slack, Kemba Walker, who knows? He did look pretty good, I thought, but he hasn't been playing a full workload. Like, I just think that the Celtics now have some questions. If I was Brett Brown, I would try to turn this into like a 90s slugfest. Play really slow. And if you look at the pace from that game, it was incredibly slow.
Yep.
I would slow it all the way down, give Embiid all the touches offensively, and let Thybulle just try and completely lock down Jason Tatum. Because if you lock down Tatum, the Celtics should be beatable.
If we're going to add points in at the end, I'd like to mention that Boston got up 10 more shots than Philadelphia in that game, and yet they only won by 8. I mean, that's telling. That's telling.
And it wasn't even a convincing 8. You know what I'm saying? Like they won that game with some free throws right at the end. It wasn't a convincing 8-point win. This was a down to the wire close game. Yeah.
A game that was definitely not down to the wire or close was Toronto taking care of Brooklyn. Seems like Brooklyn used up everything that they had in that game that they played against the Blazers to try to keep Portland out of the playoffs. I don't know who on Portland pissed off the Brooklyn Nets, but alas, they came out with a vengeance and just had nothing in the tank for the Raptors, who I don't know if they were trying all that hard, Toronto, but they were just putting up points in bunches. I mean, they looked really competent, and I don't know. I don't want to read far into it at all because it's a good team, a solid team. No one's questioning that Toronto is a highly competent organization, top to bottom. They know what they're doing. They're the reigning champs for a reason, even though they don't have Kawhi Leonard anymore. And Brooklyn is a team that they got in because they still are required to put 8 teams in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Like, I'm not really sure what we're doing here. But I don't know. Are we sleeping on Toronto at all? Are we not giving them their due as the reigning champions, as a team that plays really good defense, as a team that can apparently put up 134 on a good night? Are we sleeping on Toronto still, or is this just, the first round of the playoffs and read into it at your own peril?
Yeah, I mean, it's a question that is definitely being asked a lot. Yep. I feel like I've heard that question 18 times since the bubble started, like, whoa, who's not getting enough love?
Right.
I'll tell you what, Toronto Raptors, defending champs, they've got that finals MVP DNA. I've heard that question a lot.
Heart.
I'm certainly not letting a blowout win against the Brooklyn Nets change my opinion of them. You know what I'm saying? Like, Brooklyn, I agree. They gave everything they had in that game against the Blazers, which I enjoyed as a fan, but did it make a ton of sense at the time? Not particularly.
No.
I think Brooklyn is just way overmatched. I want to see Toronto play a real basketball team before I'm ready to say that they deserve to be, in the conversation to win the title. And by the way, they have the fourth shortest odds. If
Right.
you go past the big three of the Bucks, the Lakers, and the Clippers, it's Toronto in a tier by themselves. So I think Toronto's getting plenty of respect, in my opinion. I want to see them if they dispatch, whoever the advances between Boston and Philly, if they take care of that in 4 or 5 games, and Milwaukee is starting to show some vulnerability, then I think we have a more serious discussion about it. But as things stand right now, I'm fine with my evaluation of the Raptors.
So what you're saying is don't use up all your money because they held Garrett Temple to 1 of 10 shooting from beyond the arc. I mean, we can't read into that too far.
We said that this should be a sweep. We talked about the sweep price, and the fact that they took care of business in game 1 shouldn't be that surprising.
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. And it didn't surprise me at all that Denver was able to take down Utah in game 1. And in fact, if you can fade Utah going forward, I'd have to think that you do it. Donovan Mitchell needed 57 points to lose. I mean, he was everything for the Jazz in that game. And if he doesn't score 57 going forward, which, going out on a limb here, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's dropping 57 in any game from here on out, Denver is going to roll over them. And we can get into Denver's issues and how they allowed Donovan Mitchell to get 57 and some of the wing defense problems and having Joker out there and him still being a liability on the defensive end and Jamal Murray making shots that, frankly, Jamal Murray doesn't usually make. We can talk about those issues, but we got to talk about the Jazz's issues, which are not new, but need to be highlighted, because if anyone thought this series was going to be remotely close, I don't know what else you needed to see from game 1 to dissuade you of that thought. This is going to be Denver in a landslide, right?
Well, I mean, there are 2 things, right? One is that Utah probably should have won that game. Right?
Factual.
Like, they had a 8-second backcourt call that, if that doesn't happen, maybe things are different. Jamal Murray caught absolute fire at the end of the game. Like, Utah should have won that game. So you think about that and you're like, oh, maybe Utah can hang. But then you look at that Donovan Mitchell game. That might be the best game that he plays in his entire NBA career. He was remarkable. I mean, he scored, he rebounded, he distributed, he was efficient. That's the thing about Donovan Mitchell, is he's a great scorer, but he is not an efficient player. He shot 45% this year from the field, and that was a new career high for him. So he is not somebody that you expect to be shooting over 50% on, 33 attempts, which is what he took in that first game. So, all the things that we felt about the Jazz came to fruition. Jordan Clarkson, 39 minutes, -15 plus minus. I hate to keep picking on Jordan Clarkson, but this is the thing. With no Mike Conley, you have to play him. And when you play him, you get outscored. It's just that simple. So I think the fact that Denver was able to survive that game and win a game that they shouldn't have, now they should be able to just pretty much take care of business. We love them on the series line. I also took them at -1.5 games for essentially even money. Like all of those bets, I feel fine. I feel even better about than I did going into the series.
Yes, I have to feel good about Jamal Murray, and we mentioned it going into this. 36 points, and he was just knocking down buckets that probably aren't sustainable moving forward. But
I love Jamal Murray.
I like Jamal Murray too. I think he's a really clean player. What impressed me, and it's not something, let's be real, we don't watch a lot of Denver Nuggets regular season basketball. They're not on TNT all that much. They're not an ESPN game all that often. You watch them, you catch them for a while. You're not taking them in. You're not really understanding what the Denver Nuggets are doing at a level that you do with the Lakers or the Warriors back in the marquee teams. But with Jamal Murray, his defense has gotten so much better. Now, he is not a good defender. I don't want to lead anyone down the wrong path here. Not a good defender, but he is not an egregiously bad defender anymore. And that difference is huge. He was a +16 in this game, leading the Nuggets. And the Nuggets have some pretty good defenders. Now, team defense, still questionable. But man, I was so impressed with Murray on this. He doesn't have to repeat this performance as well for Denver to win games. You get a better performance from Paul Millsap, who's a damn good player, not at his peak of powers anymore, but he's going to do better than 8 points on 3 for 10. Michael Porter Jr., maybe that's what Michael Porter Jr. is. But you can imagine
he's been an over 50% shooter. So you could even theoretically expect some progression from him too.
He's going to have a good game or two. And having a guy like that who you don't need to rely on every night, but can give you 30, who can give you 30 on any given night as a third or fourth option is absolutely huge. And Jokic is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but 4 turnovers in the game. This was a middling performance from Jokic in my estimation. The box score says, he played pretty good, and he did, but he still has another gear or two he can reach, and it's not theoretical with him. And he can certainly drop down, but I'd venture to say that he's earned the benefit of the doubt in terms of he'll play better than this going forward. Now, I'll be interested to see how the conditioning goes. 42 minutes in game 1. Does it wear down?
Joker, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Does this thing drag out? But, Jeremy Grant was really good in this game. Monty Morris was really good in this game. They have dudes, and they can even go into the bench a little bit more if they have to. I'm feeling really good about Denver. And, depending on what they do from here on out, I might be encouraged to maybe place, a long shot odd on them in the second round, because I don't think anyone's going to be favoring them going into round number 2.
No. And just to go back to Murray, yeah. I think if you were designing the type of point guard that you would want to play next to Nikola Jokic, you would come up with somebody that looked a lot like Jamal Murray. Call. I mean, you probably wanted to be a better defender, but you don't need the true point guard who's distributing, and facilitating the offense. You want the ball in Jokic's hands doing that. And you want a point guard who is just going to be a dead-eye 3-point shooter, and that's Jamal Murray. So I love the way this team is constructed. I think that, there's still some room for growth with this team for sure in the future. I don't think that they're, at their peak yet.
Right.
But I think that for sure it's constructed well enough to beat a shorthanded Jazz team. Mike Conley going to miss at least one more game. That's pretty much a death blow for the Jazz already playing without Bojan Bogdanovic.
I mean, they're gonna have to go back to Utah for I keep forgetting that there's no actual travel. It seems completely unfair. All right, so before the Bucks lost, I thought that the game that we would talk about the most was Clippers and Mavericks, because it was wild. It was a wild basketball game, and we expected, despite the 2-7 seeding, that this would be a much more interesting series than maybe most people expected. We were both in on the Clippers. I raised my questions about the Clippers going into it. Could they flip the switch? Could they turn it on? I see a tweet from Matt LaMarca about 8 minutes into the first quarter. Hey,
the old Matt LaMarca kiss of death.
Well, you know what though? Let's be real about it. You said, did they answer the question? And I'll be honest, they did. They played so well out of the gate. They looked so impressive. And it wasn't one of these, Dallas will catch up. They were putting the clamps on them. They were really doing some positive things. And they looked like they had mojo. And that's all I needed to see. From then on, then they flipped the switch off again, and then they turned it on for a minute or two, and then they flipped it off. But I just need to see the engine in 7th, 8th gear. No one else has a 7th or 8th gear in the NBA. I just needed to see it. And they came out, they had some juice, they had some energy, and I thought they were really impressive to start the game. Doncic goes for 42, was 13 of 21. I don't know if that's sustainable. Maybe the Clippers should decide to play some interior defense at any juncture. I mean, just throwing that out there, it might be a good idea as the playoffs progress. But like Dorian Finney-Smith has a nice game. Tim Hardaway Jr. has a nice game. Kristaps gets thrown out. Seth Curry makes 4 3-pointers. That's not that different. When Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is making a couple 3-pointers, though, then you're having a good offensive game. We knew that the Mavs were a really good offensive team. What we needed to see was the Clippers turn it on. They did for stretches. Paul George looked really good in this game. Marcus Morris looked really good in this game. And Kawhi's Kawhi. He's always there. He's going to knock down more than one of 7 3-pointers going forward. I'm all in on the Clippers at this juncture, even though that this game might have been stolen away from them by the ref, or from the Mavericks by the referees. Even though we're talking about how it was a con job and Porzingis got kicked out for soft tech. We're talking about that because I saw the Clippers actually engage, even for a fleeting moment. I'm all in on them because I know that they can turn it on when they want now. And that's huge for me because I don't think there's a more talented team in the league.
Well, I'd like to officially welcome you to the Clippers bandwagon. We have some refreshments in the back if you're interested.
Michelob Ultra,
help
sure.
yourself. Yeah, that's right. The thing with the Clippers that stood out to me in this game is that their starting unit was just dominant.
Yes.
You look at all 5 of their starters had a plus minus of at least 13. And they really just got hammered when they went to their bench.
Right.
Landry Shamet had a negative 19 plus minus over less than 8.5 minutes.
I didn't know it was possible.
That is impressive. That's impressive to do that. And I think that as Montrezl Harrell gets a little bit deeper back into the rotation, that should help shore up some of those issues with the bench unit. But when this team has Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, and Patrick Beverley all on the court at the same time, that is one hell of a unit to play against. They are incredible defensively with those 4 guys on the court. I am honestly shocked at how much Marcus Morris has meant to this team.
Huge.
But he is a game changer for them.
Yep.
They need him, and he's given them great minutes. He finally shot the ball well in their first game. If he plays like that, they are not going to lose. They're going to win the title if Marcus Morris plays like that. I feel pretty confident saying that.
Well, let's extrapolate out, right? Everyone's expecting the 2 LA teams to play in the Western Conference Finals. We'll see if that comes to fruition. There's a couple of other teams that I think might have something to say about it. But you have Leonard, George, and Marcus Morris that you can all throw on LeBron. Who else is matching that? I mean, Kawhi alone is enough to give the Clippers a chance. Paul George alone, probably not enough to give a team a chance, but as a second option, holy crap, get the hell out of here. That's incredible. And Marcus Morris is such a scrappy player that you can't tell me that he can't give you 5 or 6 possessions every now and again against LeBron and put up a good fight. Morris is the kind of war daddy that you need for winning 16 games in the playoffs. You just have to have a guy like that. He was
Draymond plus Green. 25 yesterday.
He's awesome.
Plus 25.
He's awesome. And he got the second best player on the Mavericks kicked out of the game. I mean, I know that we shouldn't be condoning this, but he's their Draymond, and Draymond wins championships. That's an important distinction to make. What did you think of Zubac, by the way?
Yeah, Zubac he has a very good matchup against the Mavs. I mean, he dominated them in the paint. Yeah. The time that these two teams played in the seeding games, he had 25 and 14 in 23 minutes or something like that. He can get 2 feet in the paint against this team pretty much at will, especially once Porzingis, left the game. They had, their options are basically you go small or you play Boban. And as fun as Boban is, you don't want to rely on Boban.
Yeah.
So once you go small, Zubac is capable of hurting a team like that. I know that he's not somebody that you want to be your third option on offense, but setting screens, cleaning the glass, getting those putbacks, roll man, all that stuff, he is more than capable of playing that role. I like their lineup more with Zubac on the floor than with Harrell on the floor, which might be a controversial statement, but yeah. I just think that you don't need the stuff that Harrell is good at when you're playing all your best players.
Yeah, leave Harrell and Williams together. They have a 1-2 combination that's really hard to match. That makes your second unit that much better. I mean, I don't even know if they played well. I mean, they played well, obviously, for a little bit of a stretch. Did anyone do anything out of the ordinary? I mean, Paul George knocked down 45% of his shots. He was a good 3-point shooter, 27 points. Kawhi, 11 of 21 from the floor. He didn't shoot well from beyond the arc. 12 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 turnovers, 3 steals. This is all more or less Kawhi. You add in the bench. You add in Lou Williams doing better than 4 for 10 from the floor, which maybe is a little bit too much to ask, but sweet Lou, Lemon Pepper Lou has more game than that. Harrell getting a little bit more time, getting up to 20 minutes or so impacting the game more than he did in this contest. Reggie Jackson. I mean, they played Reggie Jackson as like a defensive stopper. I mean, Doc Rivers has clearly been messing around the entire season plus the seeding games. He was messing around in game one, a close game one of the first round of the playoffs by playing Reggie Jackson kind of down the stretch. There was no reason to do it. It was just, I don't know, throw Reggie a bone or something. When this team decides to turn it on for even a full quarter, I don't know who's keeping up with them. I really don't. And they're so competent. They're so strong. Like, they're physically very strong team. We don't talk about that kind of dynamic enough. I just feel like they have to be the team to beat at this point. Though, of course, we'll watch probably tonight's game with the Lakers and all hyperventilate over something that happens there. Let's talk about the other games that happened today. And Portland, by the way, up 36-25 on the Lakers. So maybe we're going to be hyperventilating in the different
Portland's
direction.
going to be the death of me this year. When Portland wins the whole thing, I'm just going to have to live on a cardboard box on the side of the street.
Just sit him out. Dame Lillard is out to get you. We talked a little bit of trash. He heard what I said, and he's going, this one's for Kurtenbach. At that point, it became personal for him, full Michael Jordan style.
Yeah, he needs a little skinny cigar.
Dude, I bet that cigar was like $180. Joke's on us. Miami beats the Pacers 113-101. I don't know. It felt just. It felt like, what the 4-5 matchup between the Heat and the Pacers should look like. I didn't see or feel anything watching this game that changed my mind on anything. I think the Heat take it in 5, probably 5, not 6. Pacers, they're going to play hard and be scrappy, and TJ Warren might have a game or two on that bad foot. He was minus 13 in this game, by the way. I just don't know if either of these teams have the firepower. We're talking about the Clippers having a 7th or 8th gear. I'm looking at both of these teams. I'm wondering if they can get into 4th or 5th gear comparatively to everybody else. I don't know. They're good teams. They're well coached. They know what they're about. I don't know. Did you see anything in this game that got you excited? I didn't.
Jimmy Butler, I mean, sometimes you take him for granted because he's such a psychopath, but he's the type of guy that you just want in a playoff game. And he showed that again today. I thought he was great. Goran Dragic was really good for the Heat. Oddly, Kendrick Nunn didn't play a single minute in this game. He was a finalist for Rookie of the Year, and he didn't play in the playoffs.
Can't find him 5 minutes.
I don't know if there's something going on there, but they're clearly Dragic is the better player, despite what Nunn did for stretches this year. So I agree with that decision. I just thought it was a little bit surprising. The game was ultimately closer than the final score indicated. The Pacers were in that thing the whole way until the Heat pulled away late, and Victor Oladipo not playing in the second half because he got poked in the eye also made a difference. So I'm not burying the Pacers quite yet. I still think that this team will come back. They have something to prove now. I like them getting 2.5 games. I made that bet. So if they can force this thing to 6, I think that would be a win for me. That's kind of where I see this going. I still see this as a 6 or 7 game type series. Hopefully Oladipo is back. I mean, you wouldn't think that an eye poke is something that can keep you out for an extended period of time, but maybe there was a scratch cornea or something like that.
We got to ask the MMA guys about that.
So I'll be monitoring the injury report, but as long as Oladipo is back and good to go, I'm not giving up on the Pacers quite yet.
Matchup in this one that gave me some pause was Miles Turner didn't know what the hell to do when Bam Adebayo was on the floor. I mean, Miles
Turner stinks. I'm sorry. Miles Turner, I'm putting some disrespect on your name.
Well, do you think there's a reason that he's been on the trade block for the last 2.5 years, it seems? Signed the contract and he was immediately on the trade block. Wonder what that was about.
He's a solid rim protector. I think his cred as a 3-point shooter is probably overstated at this point. If you're giving up a bunch of 3-point attempts to Miles Turner every game, I think you'll live with that defensively. Yeah, I mean, Turner he's not going to be the guy that we all want him to be. I think we need to accept that and move on. Bam Adebayo is clearly a better player. I expect Adebayo to win that matchup when they're on the floor together. We need a little bit more from Turner, but I think that, again, the Oladipo injury kind of forced Turner to carry a little bit more of a offensive role than I think the Pacers would have wanted.
I'm just surprised that Justin Holiday only had 11 points. I mean, we were talking him up as this next superstar after the game. I mean, I don't know. I Brogdon, we don't talk about Malcolm Brogdon enough. He's such a solid, competent player. He was a -9 in this game, so maybe I'm overstating it a bit, but 22 points. If he knocks down a couple more threes, maybe that's the difference for the Pacers. I don't know. I don't know how to feel about just anything between these two teams because they just don't feel like championship contenders. And I can even talk myself into it, if with, teams lower down the bracket than in the Western Conference. It just feels like these two teams are flawed. But I'm glad that you brought up Jimmy Butler. Credit to Jimmy Butler. He's kind of exactly what the Philadelphia 76ers are missing right now. And, the Miami Heat are sure as hell glad to have him because you could just give him the ball late and, tell him to win the game for you. And he might just do it. So that might be the difference. I have a hard time seeing Miami go much further. And I know a lot of people kind of like them as a dark horse. They're not on the same level as Boston, much less Toronto and Milwaukee. So, and that's without Gordon Hayward. And then the game that just ended before we came on, Houston taking down OKC. I mean, listen, James Harden was James Harden. They were able to get open shots. They moved the ball around the perimeter a lot. Houston played a damn fine game, and Oklahoma City didn't play their best lineup enough. You mentioned that you thought that Oklahoma City had another gear to get to by playing their best guys, that Gallinari, Adams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Schroeder group with Chris Paul. I didn't see him on the floor enough. And when they were on the floor, they were really good. So maybe that's the difference in game two. But game one looked pretty normal to me. It looked like that's what the Houston Rockets should do. And Oklahoma City has probably more adjustments than just going to that lineup to make if they want to make this series competitive.
Yeah, they closed the first half with that lineup.
Yeah.
I would like to see it a little bit more. This isn't like the death lineup for the Golden State Warriors. I know they had an incredible net rating this year, and listening to the broadcast, they said that best net rating of any 5-man combination in the league. So maybe it is the death lineup, but any lineup that doesn't have Terrence Ferguson in it is a good start. Terrence Ferguson is terrible. Let's get Terrence Ferguson the hell out of the lineup. Darius Bazley, I think, gives them so much more than Ferguson does.
Yes, I agree with that.
I'd even rather see like Abdul Nader than Ferguson at this point. So Ferguson, just not a good player. And he shot the ball okay today, but he's just not good.
No, he is not.
I was worried about this with the Rockets, by the way. When I wrote this up, the slate up for line movement, I honestly thought that they would play better with Westbrook out of the lineup.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of like, that's what's made this series so weird to me, is that I like the Thunder. I like their series price, but I liked it a lot better when they were plus 300 because Westbrook was in. Yep. Now that, they were like plus 120 on the series line, they were favorites in this game. I don't like that dynamic nearly as much. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that Westbrook is back. I want Westbrook back because I want the betting value back with the Thunder. The James Harden Rockets are just as good, if not better, as the James Harden plus Russell Westbrook Thunder. In terms of net rating, Harden by himself had a better net rating than Harden plus Westbrook.
Right.
The only time that I think you really miss Westbrook is when Harden is sitting, and Harden's going to be playing 40 plus minutes in the playoffs in games that are competitive. So
yeah, no, I'm with you.
Ultimately, I think that maybe we hope for some Westbrook news and buy the Thunder at that point, but obviously not what you wanted to see from the Thunder in game one.
Could you have gotten a player prop bet on Ben McLemore knocking down 4 of 7 3-point shots? I mean, this
Definitely
is the thing.
Not.
They were open looks. It's not like Ben McLemore was, creating off the dribble or anything. He was just the right guy at the right time, and he got open looks and he knocked him down. You would hope that an NBA player who gets 23 minutes in the playoffs, 24 minutes in the playoffs, can knock down 4 of 7 wide open shots. But he was he was damn good. He was a plus 27 in this game. Hot damn, Ben McLemore. Wonder what was going on in Sacramento. They couldn't get anything out of that guy.
And Jeff Green was a plus 28. I don't think that either of that will continue again.
Fair enough.
So that should hopefully push the Thunder up, a little bit more.
Yeah.
The Rockets are playing a pretty tight rotation, which I like. They have 8 guys right now that they trust with Westbrook out.
Mm-hmm.
They're all guards and wings. We know that that's how they're going to play.
Yep.
The rebound battle, I have to check the team stats, but I think Houston did better than I was expecting them to in that contest. They only lost by 10. Yeah. That's not so bad. Yeah. They have to just avoid getting beat by, 15, 20 rebounds on a nightly basis, and playing those small lineups is going to be okay for them.
Yeah. Eric Gordon had a pretty good game, or at least good stretches in this game, but you can even take him up another level. Robert Covington was just kind of flat out bad. Certainly always going to be competent on the defensive end, but 1 for 6 from the floor. No, sir.
This is what you get with Covington. There are those games where he just cannot buy one.
Totally. But when you get 3 out of 8 from PJ Tucker, you just take it all the way to the bank. I mean, and this is the kicker with the Rockets. You say, oh, stop Harden. Like, that can be done. It just can't be done. The dude's on another level right now. The 40 days and 40 nights in the desert really brought out something new in him. And one of these guys, Jeff Green, is going to knock down 2 3-pointers off of the dribble just to initiate an offense. He's just going to come down the floor. You're not going to guard him, and Jeff Green's going to knock down 2 3-pointers. Like, that's just going to happen because James Harden commands that much gravity. Ben McLemore's going to go 4 for 7. And the next game, it might be Eric Gordon. It might be Robert Covington. It might be PJ Tucker. It might be Daniel House. It could be Austin Rivers who gets more time. Somebody else besides Harden, mathematically speaking, is going to have a good game. And if it's Harden plus somebody else, it's just really difficult to beat the efficiency of the Rockets, knocking down 38 threes on 52 attempts. I mean, just 3 is greater than 2. The math is pretty simple. As long as they don't miss 27 in a row, they're going to put points on the board, and they're just competent enough on the defensive end to get it done. I don't know if Oklahoma City has the offense in the half court or even, creating transition opportunities, which they didn't do enough of in this game, to make this interesting on the final scoreboard. I think that the Rockets are getting 120 every single night, and I don't know if Oklahoma City can get there. I just don't know if they can do it. What you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Houston is going to have games where they score. They're also going to have games where they miss a few shots. They were red hot today. And then once you get out to a big lead, it's so much easier to play. Like, if this game was more competitive in the first half, who knows where it goes. I think that the Thunder for sure are not done. They have plenty of performances left. Chris Paul started the first quarter. He was ice cold. He missed his first 6 shot attempts, I think. So, they need better performances from Chris Paul. I talked him up as a bottom of the ballot MVP candidate. He did not play like that today. They need that.
Well, he almost had a triple double.
Yeah, but we need playoff time. Let's go, Chris Paul. Score the ball, Chris Paul mode. We don't need facilitating. I want some prime LA Clippers Chris Paul right now.
I expected more out of Gilgeous-Alexander, by the way, than what we saw in this game. He did not feel like a factor in this contest. And I know he's young, but he's a dude who can really affect a game. It might not always show up in the box score, but when he's in there, you feel him. You understand that he's controlling things. I didn't get that vibe at all in this contest. I don't know if maybe there's a pace issue going on, but man, it felt like Schroeder was the more important player. By the way, Schroeder 3 of 12 from the floor, 0 of 5 from beyond the arc, but he was doing a pretty good job, as well as the job you can do on Harden in this contest, playing some pretty tough defense. He's just not strong enough to stay in front of him. I don't know. I need more out of Gilgeous-Alexander if I'm going to see the Thunder turning this into a real series as opposed to a gentleman's sweep. Because right now I'm thinking it's Rockets in 5. I mean, that's just where my gut is. And it might be an overreaction to the initial data point, but it feels like Rockets in 5. Are you still in on Oklahoma City getting to 6 or 7?
Yeah, I think for sure they can get it to 6 games. I mean, dropping the first one obviously puts them behind the 8 ball a little bit, but I think that they can definitely win the next game. And just speaking on the Shai Gilgeous-Alexander thing, if you look at the on-court data, the numbers have suggested that their 3 most important players are Chris Paul, Dennis Schroeder,
Mm-hmm.
and Danilo Gallinari. Like
Right.
those three guys are the engine that drives the Thunder. SGA still has a ton of promise, but he's not there yet.
I'll give it that. I'll give it that. But the playoffs kind of exposes stuff like that, right? You would think that it might be less pronounced because there's not a crowd and the energy. These guys are amped up and they're ready to play hard, but it doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel like, when the Thunder go on that, 13-14-0 run there to end the first half. I mean, if you're in Houston for that game, that's a totally different vibe. That's a totally different feeling. There's a dejection that hits the arena. And then the Rockets have to dig themselves out of that hole. Whereas they can just go into the locker room and go, oh, we have a lead. No big deal. They don't have to feel the emotions of that moment the same way that they would under normal circumstances. So you would think that it would be, somewhat less pronounced, but here we are, a young player who's got some stuff to figure out. Still all in on him long-term, but be nice to see more from him in game 2 and beyond. Let's look forward now. Let's talk about tomorrow's games. And, we were really struggling last time we came on because the lines have been late. I know this is how the NBA operates. I know. But
better now.
It's so much better now because they know who the hell's playing and who's going to be there.
Lineup chicanery, makes things very tough.
Regular season lineup.
Playoffs were good to go.
Lineup chicanery is bad. Imagine doing it in a bubble where no one's trying and no one knows where anybody is. Tomorrow, another full slate of NBA basketball from morning to night. It is really spectacular. This pandemic sucks, but we're getting basketball all day, so it's not all bad news. And we're going to start. Well, okay, here's some bad news. We're going to start with Nets and Raptors. Raptors are 10.5-point favorites on BlitzBet. If you want to feel better about the Nets, you can get them at a 520 money line on BlitzBet right now. It's blitzbet.eu if you're up in Canada. 520 money line on the Nets. I don't know. Is there anything more we need to break down? The Raptors took it to them in game 1. I mean, is Karis LeVert going to drop 55 on them, or are we just going to move on to game 3 with the Nets down 2-0?
Yeah, I wouldn't bet the Raptors minus 11,
right?
Minus 10.5, but that's the only bet I would even consider in this game. I just don't like to typically bet on favorites that big because anything can happen, as we saw today with the Milwaukee Bucks. You never know when one 100%. Team is going to have, a lay the egg type performance and the other team's going to come out red hot.
Totally.
But if I had to bet the game, it would be the Raptors.
All right. Jazz and Nuggets. Nuggets are 3.5-point favorites. That feels low.
Too low.
It feels like the value here is on Denver. And they're minus 169 on BlitzBet on the money line for Denver. I mean, none of this feels right. I'm all in on Denver in this game.
Agreed.
Okay. Any thoughts on the total 217.5?
My initial thought is that might be a little bit low too. Utah's playing a little bit faster, in the bubble without Bogdanovich, with Clarkson in. Yeah. So, and we know that the Nuggets offensively are great. They're one of the more efficient offensive teams in the league. They're pretty poor defensively. So I think that this total is probably a smidge too low. I haven't really dove into the numbers yet, but I would go Nuggets for sure is the best bet in this game, followed by the over.
Okay. 76ers at Celtics. The Celtics without Gordon Hayward, 4.5-point favorites.
Yeah, that doesn't seem right to me either. I like Philly, but I think my favorite bet here is under 215. I think that this is going to be an old school playoff battle. These two teams have played 5 times now this season. 3 times the score has been 210 or lower, including in the first playoff game. So I think that if anything, we're going to get an even slower, uglier game now with no Hayward, with more Marcus Smart, hopefully with more Matisse Thybulle for 76ers backers. I think that this is an under type game. So for me, this one is under 215 and then Philly.
Yeah, I'm
probably Philly money line, honestly, as opposed to the 4.5 points.
Yeah, you can get a plus 153 on BlitzBet right now for Sixers money line. That's where I'm going with my money. That feels like the right bet. Just give Joel Embiid more shots, and we'll see where we're at when this thing shakes out. Then the nightcap, Mavericks at Clippers. Clippers 6.5-point favorites. That almost feels a little aggressive. Listen, I'm in on the Clippers long term, but I don't think that this Dallas team is just going to go away. You're going to get a second half of Kristaps Porzingis, presumably. Luka is going to get whatever he wants. I don't know if the Clippers decide we're going to go out for a full 48 minutes in this one. They might only decide to go out for, 12 minutes as opposed to the normal 10. 6.5 feels dangerous. That's where my head's at. What are you thinking?
Still in on the Clippers. I think if you look at how good they were with those starters on the floor, then you factor in that Patrick Beverley only played 20.4 minutes because of foul trouble, and Montrezl Harrell only played 15 minutes. Like, if you up those two guys' minutes and you take some away from the J. Michael Greens and the Landry Shamits of the world, I think that this team has room for growth. So I think that the Clippers are probably being a little bit disrespected right now. I don't think that the perception is that the Clippers are the best team in the league at this point. Maybe that changes after tonight if Portland beats the Lakers. With the Lakers going down and the Bucks going down, maybe people start saying, the Clippers, this is probably theirs to lose. But I don't think we're at that point yet, and that's where I'm at. So I think that 6.5 is not enough for them.
And we don't really do narratives unless we can make money off of them. I mean, listen, I'm a narrative guy, but we're here to make people money if we're really calling it like we see it. And so narratives, talk all you want. Let me go on and on and on. Unless there's value to be found, doesn't matter. So, after tonight, after one game, if we're talking about the Clippers being the favorites, unless it moves the odds, who really gives a damn? Total of 228.5, though, in that Mavericks-Clippers game. That is an enticing number. Which way do you fall?
I think most people will see that number and think over. I'm probably going in the other direction. I think Luka Doncic, going 13 for 21 from the field, 14 for 15 from the line. That screams regression, for moving forward, especially considering all the defenders that the Clippers have to throw at him. So I get it. Luka is phenomenal. He had 42 points, most by any player ever in their playoff debut. He is the future.
Oh, yeah.
The Clippers are the present.
I'm with you, man. I'm glad that we could come to this agreement. We disagree a lot. I'm glad that we can both get on the Clippers bandwagon together because it only means great things for them. And I say that in the most sarcastic way possible because I don't know, man. We have jinxed a team or two. We've made people some money, don't get me wrong, but we've jinxed a team or two in our day, Bucks not included. Matt LaMarca, tell the people what's coming up from you with the written word at my line movement right now. What do you got? What do you got in store for us, buddy?
Yeah, I'm gonna have another breakdown going up for Wednesday's slate. So all 4 games, I'll have a full betting breakdown up there. You can pretty much expect that if there is going to be basketball played, you can find my written content on Line Movement basically every day.
It's a beautiful thing. You know what? And that's the stuff we're looking for. Repeatable. When it's coming. And Matt LaMarca is going to bring you the goods every single day. And if you don't already follow him on Twitter, Matt, tell them where they can find you. At
Matt LaMarca. Just like the name. Pretty simple.
All right. I'm Dieter Kurtenbach at Dieter on Twitter. We're going to do this again later this week. If you liked what you saw, subscribe, do all that stuff. But more importantly, if you're up in Canada or somebody who's north of the border, hit up blitzbet.eu. That's the spot you want to go to. Some great promos. Your money's going to go further with blitzbet.eu, right? There's a lot of places that you can bet, but that's the spot to do it. And Matt LaMarca has given you the cheat sheet. Now you know where you can put all that good knowledge to work. Blitzbet.eu. All right, we're going to sign off. We'll talk to you. Look at that. The Lakers have already pulled it close again. We'll talk to you guys soon.